Trump had been set to be sentenced next week for illegally concealing hush money payments to an adult film star. But that was before the U.S. Supreme Court on Monday ruled that former presidents enjoyed immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts taken while in office. And a New York judge on Tuesday agreed to delay Trump's sentencing until September 18th. The change comes after Trump's attorneys argued the Supreme Court's decision means the first former president to be criminally convicted should have his conviction overturned. Prosecutors with Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office said earlier on Tuesday that Trump's argument was, quote, without merit, but agreed to delay the sentencing to give Trump the chance to make his case. In a written ruling, New York Justice Juan Merchan said he would rule on Trump's request by September 6th, with sentencing to follow less than 2 weeks later, should the judge decide to uphold the conviction. Trump's lawyers must submit their arguments by July 10th, and prosecutors face a July 24th deadline to respond. A New York jury found Trump guilty on 34 counts relating to the illegal concealment of payments to Stormy Daniels in an effort to buy her silence about what she says was a sexual affair with the former reality TV star. Trump pleaded not guilty and denies the affair. The sentencing had previously been set for July 11th, just days before the Republican National Convention begins in Milwaukee. The new timeline means Trump will likely have been nominated by his party to challenge Democratic President Joe Biden by the time he is sentenced. Justice Juan Merchan will now decide Trump's punishment, including whether to jail him, in the thick of the general election campaign ahead of the November 5th election. Trump faces an uphill battle getting the hush money conviction overturned, since much of the conduct at issue in the case predated his time in office.
The UN Refugee Agency has said it's expanding its Sudan aid plan to Libya and Uganda after a surge in arrivals. Sudan's 14-month-old war has already created the world's worst displacement crisis, with some 12 million people forced to flee their homes and more than 2 million across borders.
Let's stay in Africa and go to Sudan.
On Tuesday, a UNHCR planning document showed the agency expects to receive 149,000 refugees in Libya before the year end and 55,000 in Uganda. UNHCR spokesperson Ewan Watson said most of those arriving in Libya were fleeing Darfur, where ethnic violence has escalated.
It just speaks to the desperate situation and desperate decisions that people are making, that they end up in a place like Libya, which is, of course, extremely difficult for refugees right now.
The arrivals in Libya raise the prospect that refugees may risk the dangerous Mediterranean route to reach Europe. That's a scenario which the UNHCR's chief has already warned about if aid is not provided. The Sudan aid response is suffering from a shortage of resources. That's amid record humanitarian needs due to multiple crises around the world and as some donors retrench due to domestic budget constraints. The latest expansion of the UN response plan brings to 7 the number of African countries taking in large numbers of Sudanese refugees.
Plastic waste litters the shores of this resort town near Manila, the Philippines' sprawling capital. This coastal cleanup crew is trying to hold back the steady flood of waste. But each sack of waste they gather doesn't go unrewarded. They get a 2-pound bag of rice in exchange, enough for a small family's needs. Green campaigners say the exchange can educate the community about why protecting the environment is so critical, all while keeping the shores clean and, as inflation bites, keeping people here, like Janet Acevida, afloat.
Yung pong pagkapalit ko po ng bigas ay napakalaking tulong dahil sa isang buwan ay halos ay 4 na kalahating kaban. Ngayon po ay 2 na lang ang aking binibili sa laking tulong at tipid ng pagpapalit ng basura. At nakakatulong ito sa ating environment, ika nga. Sa ating kapaligiran at kalinisan ay talaga makikita.
Mabini in Batangas province is a world-class scuba diving destination, known for its vibrant corals and marine biodiversity. But a rising tide of plastic pollution is posing an increasing threat to marine life. Organizer Giulio Indaya has witnessed the harm firsthand.
I've seen sea turtles entangled in nets and other types of plastic. They've been known to eat straws and plastic bags. And the fish also eat microplastics that have been, broken down in the shore. And recently we've been finding more and more microplastics even in fish that we eat. So it's also harmful to us.
To untangle the problem, Indaya and his group of volunteers spearheaded the Plastic Balit Bigas, or Plastic in Exchange for Rice program. The project is funded by donations from individuals and small companies that advocate for marine conservation. Through the exchange, Mabini volunteers can turn in sacks of litter, regardless of weight, for a kilogram or 2.2 pounds of rice. Volunteer Raymond Bassett says it's been a potent incentive.
Nakakatulong siya dahil yung mga tao lalong nakaka-urge. Dahil hindi rin natin minsan yung mga ibang tao, yung dala rin ng kahirapan minsan, lalo na sa panahon ngayon, ang mahal natin ang mga bilihin. Nakaka-urge sila na sa kanilang free time, maglinis sila. May mga napupush ang kanilang sarili na maglinis sila dahil meron silang matatanggap na something malaking bagay rin yun sa isang tao.
An updated 2022 University of Oxford report found that the Philippines accounts for 36% of the total global input of plastic waste into the ocean, more than any other country. The Plastic for Rice exchange aims to change that. According to Indaya, since cleanup efforts began in October 2022, more than 4.7 US tons of garbage have been collected in exchange for nearly 3 tons.
Cambodia has sentenced 10 environmental activists to jail for up to 8 years for plotting against the government and insulting the king. That's according to the founder of the activist group, Mother Nature, and a lawyer on Tuesday. The verdict comes amid growing concerns about freedom of expression in the country under Prime Minister Hun Manet. 5 of the defendants were arrested outside the court in capital city Phnom Penh immediately after the verdict, as supporters dressed in white held placards reading "Justice is dead." Activist Ton Rotter.
The court charged us with plotting to overthrow the government, or insulting the king, etc., trying to do whatever to jail us. That is a big mistake, and not only affects the court system, but it affects the new government that has young blood, which we hoped would have democracy, respect human rights, freedom. But on the contrary, it showed us their fierce activity.
Mother Nature has long campaigned against environmental destruction in Cambodia. The group highlights deforestation, illegal sand mining and corruption in development projects. The group's founder, Spanish national Alejandro González Davidson, who was sentenced in absentia, said he was one of 3 charged with infringing Cambodia's lèse-majesté law. He told Reuters that while the accusations of plotting against the state had not been clarified in court, 3 members were arrested after documenting suspected pollution runoff into a river in the capital in 2021. The lèse-majesté charges relate to an internal Zoom meeting about political cartooning that was leaked. New York-based group Human Rights Watch branded the verdict devastating. The Cambodian government has previously denied the trial was politically motivated, saying it did not prosecute critics, only those who commit crimes.
A stampede at a Hindu religious event in northern India on Tuesday has resulted in scores of deaths and more than 24 people injured, according to news agency ANI. A police report seen by Reuters said that the number of people present was more than triple the permitted capacity. The tragedy took place at a village in the Hathras district of Uttar Pradesh state, where 250,000 people attended an event that only had permission for 80,000. Most of the dead were women, along with several children, according to state officials. Kamala says she lost her daughter in the disaster.
My daughter was all right when she arrived at the hospital. In fact, my daughter served water to other victims, helped them, and called my brother, informing us that she had made it to the hospital safely. But by the time my brother reached the hospital, my daughter was dead.
The police report also described a scene of utter chaos when the preacher of the congregation at the event, known as Bole Baba, was leaving his car. The report goes on to say thousands of devotees shouted and ran towards the car, crushing others still sitting in the gathering. Some people also fell into a nearby field of slush and mud and were trampled there. Local media said the event was organised by a group of devotees but did not identify anyone. ANI news agency, in which Reuters has a minority stake, said police were trying to determine the whereabouts of the preacher. Police officials in Hatras were not immediately available for comment.
Hurricane Beryl is breaking records as it tears through the Caribbean. Over the weekend, it became the first Category 4 storm to ever form in the Atlantic in the month of June. On Tuesday, it became the earliest storm on record to reach Category 5, the strongest possible ranking. Scientists say that all points to a very dangerous hurricane season ahead. Hurricane season in the Atlantic Ocean typically lasts from June through November, peaking in late summer. On average, it produces 14 named storms, of which half become hurricanes. But the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has warned of an extraordinary 2024 Atlantic season. We could see up to 25 named storms instead, and 13 hurricanes. Scientists blame record-breaking sea temperatures, driven by human-caused climate change and cyclical weather patterns. A Category 5 is the strongest hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale, bringing winds of 157 miles per hour or higher, capable of causing catastrophic damage, including the destruction of homes and infrastructure.
The 2nd of July, we do not normally talk about Category 5 hurricanes in July.
World Meteorological Organization spokesperson Claire Nullis.
So we've got very, very warm waters, and we need to bear in mind that it only takes one landfalling hurricane to set back, decades of development, and we fear what is happening with Hurricane Beryl, which has hit very, very, very small islands in the Caribbean who are not used to this size of hurricane. We fear that this is going to have a major knock on socioeconomic development.
Since 1960, only 30 Atlantic hurricanes have reached Category 5. The most recorded in a single season was 4, and that was in 2005, the year Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans. Beryl is the strongest storm to hit the southeastern Caribbean in 2 decades. It made landfall on small islands in the eastern Caribbean on Monday. It's currently forecast to barrel over the Caribbean island of Jamaica on Wednesday, where it could dump as much as 12 inches of rain, skimming the Dominican Republic and Haiti along the southern coast of the island of Hispaniola.
Opponents of France's national rally stepped up their bid to block the far-right party of Marine Le Pen from power on Tuesday, as more than 200 candidates agreed to pull out of this weekend's runoff election, according to local media reports. The dropouts include those who finished in 3rd place in the first round of voting, and they are quitting the race as part of a strategy to create a Republican front to block the anti-immigrant Eurosceptic party. Le Pen's party came out well ahead in Sunday's first-round vote after President Emmanuel Macron's gamble on a snap election backfired, leaving his centrist camp in a lowly 3rd-place position behind the National Rally and a hastily formed left-wing alliance. Still, it was far from clear National Rally could win the 289 seats needed for a majority, and that was before the coalition maneuvering of the last 24 hours. But National Rally lawmakers, including Laure Lavalette, who won her race in the election's first round, remained confident.
I think that the French are very disappointed with these dealings, these behind-the-scenes dealings, and I am convinced that we will obviously have the absolute majority to be able to truly change the daily lives of the French.
The Republican front approach has worked before, such as in 2002 when voters of all stripes rallied behind Jacques Chirac to defeat Le Pen's father, Jean-Marie, in a presidential contest. However, it is not certain voters these days are willing to follow guidance from political leaders on where to place their vote, while Marine Le Pen's efforts to soften the image of her party has made it less of a pariah.
If you are slightly surprised to see me, I want to be absolutely clear that I was glad when Rishi asked me to help. Of course I couldn't say no. And I'm here for one reason and one reason only, which is the same reason as all of you, all of us are here. We're here because we love our country. And whatever our differences, they are utterly trivial by comparison with the disaster we may face if these so-called opinion polls are right.
Isn't it great to have our Conservative family united, my friends? Yeah! Right. Now, Boris is right to say now is the time for all Conservatives to come together to deny Labour that supermajority that Keir Starmer craves. We have 48 hours to save Britain from the danger of a Labour government.
Summer has just started. Already, tens of millions of Americans are under heat warnings from record-shattering temperatures. Ignoring climate change is deadly and dangerous and irresponsible. These climate-fueled extreme weather events don't just affect people's lives, they also cost money, they hurt the economy, and they have a significant negative psychological effect on people. The Inflation Reduction Act, the most significant climate investment ever in the history of the world, anywhere in the world, has already created 300,000 new jobs, building clean energy we need to cut our emissions and to lead the world. Unfortunately, my predecessor and the MAGA Republicans in Congress are trying to undo all this progress. They still deny climate change even exists. They deny climate change even exists. They must be living in a hole somewhere at the expense of health and safety of their own constituents. They deny it exists. Every single congressional Republican voted against the investments which created these jobs and combat climate change. Many of them are trying to repeal those climate provisions and kill those jobs. I quite frankly think it's not only outrageous, it's really stupid. Everyone who willfully denies the impacts of climate change is condemning the American people to a dangerous future, and either is really, really dumb or has some other motive of that. How can you deny there's climate change, for God's sake?
Wall Street's main indexes closed higher on Tuesday, boosted by gains in Tesla and mega-cap growth stocks. The Dow rose 0.4%, the S&P 500 added 0.6%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained more than 0.8%. A survey from the Labor Department showed job openings increased in May, but April's were revised to show the fewest job openings in 3 years. Meanwhile, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell told a panel at a European Central Bank forum that recent economic data showed significant progress on inflation, but that more evidence was needed before the Fed could start cutting rates. That contrasts with the decisions of other central banks, notes Liz Miller, president of Summit Place Financial Advisors.
The last mile of inflation historically has always been sticky, bumpy. Choose your word. It's not a straight line. And when you look at the inflation arc all over the world, every developed country has followed the exact same arc up and down that we have. There's nothing that unique about our situation. It's just that other central bankers have decided to prioritize in their country, growth over price stability, and they're starting to lower rates. We are not making that our priority.
Notable stock moves included Tesla, which surged to its highest level since the start of January after the EV maker reported a smaller than expected drop in vehicle deliveries in the second quarter. Mega-cap stocks such as Apple rose more than 1.5%, while Amazon and Alphabet also climbed. AI chip leader NVIDIA dropped more than 1%, with the trend in other chip stocks largely mixed. NVIDIA is up more than 147% year to date. And shares of Paramount Global climbed more than 5.5% after news that billionaire Barry Diller's digital media conglomerate IAC was exploring a bid to take control of the media giant.
Japan is getting its first new banknotes in 20 years. The fresh designs entered circulation on Wednesday, featuring technology meant to beat counterfeiters. Some 7.5 billion of the bills will be printed this fiscal year. But they won't be a welcome sight for many small businesses, because Japan is a country that still loves cash and payment by machine. It's the usual way at places like this Tokyo noodle joint. Boss Shintaro Sekiguchi has had to upgrade the payment machines at his 3 branches, and he says that's a big cost for small business.
The unit price of a bowl of ramen is not that high, so running the shop for a day or two would hardly pay for the replacement. It's a huge burden for me to have to upgrade the ticket machines like this.
In all, he says it's cost him about 600,000 yen, or about $3,700, while doing nothing to boost sales. Sekiguchi says upgrading to machines that also allow card payments was even more expensive and beyond his budget. Such factors mean only around half of restaurant ticket systems are ready for the change. Japan is a land of vending machines too. It's thought about 80% of the country's 2.2 million drink dispensers will need an upgrade. However, most ATMs, train ticket machines and retail cash registers are ready. And some companies definitely aren't complaining. Takemori Kawanami is an executive at Elcom, which makes ticket machines. He says it could take until the end of the year to meet all the demand.
Tesla's vehicle deliveries fell by a smaller than expected amount in the second quarter. A report on Tuesday showed deliveries were down 5% compared to the same period a year earlier. It was driven by the electric vehicle giant's price cuts and incentives that helped stimulate demand. Tesla handed over just under 444,000 vehicles in the 3 months to June 30th, though that was down from last year but up 14.8% on the previous quarter. Analysts had expected a lower number. The majority of deliveries were made up by the Model 3 and Model Y, while Tesla sold more than 21,500 units of other models like the Cybertruck and Model S. Tesla has been involved in a price war with rivals. Elon Musk's company has also offered discounts and incentives such as low-interest loans and cheaper leasing plans. However, Tuesday's numbers mark the first time Tesla has posted a year-on-year sales fall for a second consecutive quarter. The update comes on the same day as Chinese rival BYD's second quarter report. It saw EV sales rise by just over a fifth to close the gap with Tesla as the world's top electric vehicle vendor. EU countries are divided over whether to back the bloc's new tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. A government source said Germany wants to stop the duties altogether. Its car makers made a third of their sales last year in China, and a leading auto industry group from the country urged the EU to back down Wednesday. But fellow European powerhouse France has been among the strongest supporters of the tariffs, and a poll by Reuters showed a majority of countries are still weighing the pros and cons of the trade fallout. The issue will be put to EU members in an advisory vote in the coming weeks. The bloc is due to confirm on Thursday provisional duties of up to 37.6% on Chinese EV makers like BYD. China-made models from Western automakers like Tesla and BMW will also be hit. EU members will then vote in October if the Commission proposes multi-year tariffs at the end of its investigation. But these will be blocked if at least 15 countries representing 65% of the EU population votes against them. France, Italy and Spain, with 40% of the EU population, have indicated they would support tariffs, while sources say others like Poland and Greece are still debating the issue. The Commission says the aim of the duties is to level the playing field rather than shut Chinese automakers out. It wants to counter cheap loans, land, raw materials and other subsidies. Supporters also believe tariffs could give the EU leverage in negotiations with Beijing and push producers to make cars in the EU. But there is concern over the danger of retaliation from China. It's thought Beijing could put its own tariffs on EU exports of cognac, pork or luxury cars. China's BYD saw sales accelerate by just over a fifth in the second quarter. It helped the electric vehicle maker close the gap with rival Tesla for the title of world's top EV seller. BYD sold slightly over 426,000 EVs in the April to June quarter, according to Reuters calculations. That's around 12,000 fewer than Tesla's estimated deliveries. The US firm is expected to report a 6% drop in its quarterly deliveries on Tuesday. If so, it would be the first time it's posted 2 straight quarters of decline. Elon Musk's company is dealing with strong competition in China. Demand has also slowed due to a lack of affordable new models. The company may give up its top EV seller title to BYD if the actual results turn out to be softer than estimated. Industry data suggests that Tesla's China-made EV sales in June fell by almost a quarter from a year earlier. By comparison, BYD maintained steady growth in EV sales. Other Chinese EV upstarts like NIO also reported stellar growth last quarter.
Get a hair transplant after his hairline receded? Justin Bieber took a break from public attention for a few years, but has been under intense scrutiny recently. Although his early success in music was accompanied by controversy, the focus now is on criticism related to his marriage to Hailey Bieber. This includes how their recent Instagram posts may be signaling marriage problems and how the baby singer may have turned to religion amid a mental health breakdown. But more recently, Bieber's physical appearance has been under the spotlight, mainly because he has been accused of getting a hair transplant following expert testimony that his hairline had receded and then miraculously grown back. Male pattern baldness is quite common in Hollywood and among the general male population. The key difference lies in access to treatments, which are more available to those with financial means. Justin Bieber likely has the resources to afford any cosmetic treatment he might want, including for hair loss. According to the Daily Mail, several plastic surgeons and hair growth experts believe Justin Bieber had a secret hair transplant. Plastic surgeon Dr. Gary Linkov suggested on TikTok that Justin Bieber underwent a hair transplant based on the observed change in Bieber's hairline over 2 years, though these claims remain unverified. When I look at his forehead, the hairline is now much flatter. It doesn't have that recession. And when the hair is wet, you can tell the regularity of the hairline, so it looks like maybe he did have a transplant. I think, based on photos, I would say, he has likely had a hair restoration surgery. Dr. Linkov suggested that Justin Bieber may have hidden his hair transplant recovery by frequently wearing hoodies and hats over the past couple of years. Previously, there were rumors of Bieber's hair loss due to bleaching, and he had ironically criticized Prince Harry and Prince William for their hair loss during his more controversial days. Bieber is also rumored to have received many procedures aside from his alleged hair transplant. According to multiple sources, Bieber has been accused of getting a nose job, fillers, and Botox. Justin Bieber experienced a noticeable change in his face due to Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, a neurological disorder that caused temporary facial drooping. Despite initial speculation, this change was not related to plastic surgery, and Bieber has since recovered well from the ordeal.
a pрем'єр-міністр Угорщини Віктор Орбан. És azt kértem az elnök úrtól, hogy fontoljuk meg, hogy nem lehetne a sorrendet megfordítani, és egy gyors tűzszünettel fölgyorsítani a béketárgyalásokat. Egy határidőhöz kötött tűzszünet, amely lehetőséget ad a béketárgyalások felgyorsítására. Ennek a lehetőségeit mértem föl, ezt tisztáztam az elnök úrral, hálás vagyok az őszinte tárgyalásért és válaszokért.
Entonces nuestro compromiso es de formar nuevas familias en distintas partes. Los 4 últimos ejemplares del rinoceronte blanco del norte de África provenían de zoológicos, República Checa, Alemania, lo que habla de que efectivamente somos los garantes de que estas especies no desaparezcan, porque somos los que conservamos la última genética de los últimos ejemplares.
Claro, ya tuvo su primer control de niño sano, donde se pesa y se le hacen chequeos, muestras de sangre, se le pone el microchip y después ya como alrededor de un mes más se tiene que volver a monitorear.
एक आयोजन भोले बाबा का समागम हो रहा था, जिसमें जब समागम अंत हो रहा था तो उस समय अत्यधिक उमस के कारण जब वहाँ से लोग निकलने को हुए तो उस समय ये घटना कारित हुई है।